Hello? My name is Bella, though for years it felt like I was nobody at all. I was the one footing the bills while they raised their glasses to her victories. At dinner, my father would sneer with that familiar edge of disdain. "You'll never match your sister," he'd say, like it was a prophecy meant to haunt me. My mother would laugh, a tinkling, careless sound, clinking her glass as though she were giving a toast at a wedding, not mocking her own child. And my sister, oh, she basked in it all, flashing that radiant, knowing smile, the same one I had paid for, unknowingly, in every dollar and every sacrifice I had made. They drained me of my money, my voice, my signature, and then slowly, almost ceremoniously, they erased me. From the photographs lining the walls, from the will tucked away in some forgotten drawer, even from the memories I thought were ours, I became invisible in the life I had built for them. But the moment I finally said, with a calmness that startled even myself, "Then let her pay the bills," their faces turned as pale as winter frost. That, I realized, was only the beginning. What would you do? I asked myself. In the quiet moments of the evening, if the people who raised you treated you like a resource, a ghost, a ledger entry, 12 hours under the unforgiving glare of fluorescent lights had left me hollow. 12 hours spent in chaos and scrubs, brushing against someone else's worst day, absorbing it like a stain I couldn't scrub away. I hadn't even had the chance to shower. My shoes were still tacky from the ICU floor cleaner. My ponytail had loosened, and soft curls escaped around my neck, clinging to my sweat. And here I was, walking into a house that smelled of lemon-polished wood and rosemary chicken, the signature scent of my mother's company. That should have been my first warning. This was not an ordinary dinner, but I was too bone-weary to process that. Too exhausted to suspect the performance about to unfold. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and slipped my phone quietly into my bag, silencing a text from a patient's family. "Thank you for staying with Mom until the end." Not a flicker of acknowledgement from anyone. The dining room glowed in soft yellow light, cast from a chandelier that seemed to have been plucked from a magazine spread. Vera, my mother, floated between the kitchen and the table, every movement calculated, every curl and pearl in place, her smile perfectly plastic, like the rehearsed warmth of a reality show host. Gideon, my father, was already seated, wine glass half full, eyes darting to his watch. "Nice of you to join us," he muttered, not even looking at me, his tone casual, dismissive, cutting. Callista had been waiting, I realized, scanning the table, floral centerpieces, delicate place cards, wine glasses catching the light, plates arranged like a catalog photo, but no place card for me, not one. Callista, Mom, Dad, Oren, all had their names written in elegant gold foil. I had nothing, not even a folded napkin. I lowered myself into the seat at the end, nearest the kitchen, farthest from the wine, and said nothing. I didn't need to comment. My back ached from the exertion of lifting a 6-foot unconscious man onto a stretcher just hours earlier. Callista sat across from me, glowing in a silk blouse, bone white with pearl buttons that caught the chandelier's light like a halo. I knew that blouse. I had seen it online, the receipt lingering on the credit card she still used, the one under my name. She chattered on about her new job title, Director of Brand Engagement, a role that seemed designed entirely for Instagram filters and overpriced candles. "Congratulations, sweetheart," Vera cooed, brushing Callista's hair back like she was still 12. "Your boss sees what we've known all along." And then came the toast. Gideon rose, glass in hand, and the familiar tightening in my chest told me it was about to witness the performance I had already paid for in every sense of the word. Gideon turned to the table, deliberately skipping me, never me. "To my brilliant daughter Callista," he began, pausing, letting the words hang in the air like a trophy on display. "Some people are just born to shine." Glasses clinked all around, not a flicker of recognition for me. I didn't move. Callista's smile widened, almost painfully radiant. Oren laughed politely, the sort of laugh designed to fit in, to avoid discomfort. Vera beamed, proud as though she'd raised royalty, rather than a child who had quietly paid for everything. I swallowed hard, not the wine, my dignity, and tried to breathe through the tightening in my chest. My throat was dry, my lungs heavy, my hands aching to do something, anything. I opened my mouth, testing the waters, letting words slip out softly. We revived a cardiac arrest patient today. My voice wavered only slightly. ICU was full, but we stabilized her. My team. Oh, Bella. Gideon cut me off, shaking his head with that dismissive smirk I knew so well. You're still at that hospital, right? Look, we know you try hard, but you'll never match your sister. That's just life. Vera laughed, clinking her glass against his like they were complicit in some private joke. Callista smirked, the kind of smirk that wasn't joy, wasn't warmth, but superiority, condescension in a silk blouse. I didn't cry, I didn't flinch, but something inside me cracked, a quiet fissure in glass that was ready to shatter. I reached for my wine glass, finally lifting it, but not to toast. I turned it gently in my hand by the stem, deliberately, and met Gideon's eyes. Then I said the words I had rehearsed silently for years. Then let her pay the bills. It took them a moment to process. Vera blinked first, shock breaking her practiced composure. Oren set down his fork mid-bite. Callista froze, her smile faltering. Gideon's brows furrowed, confusion overtaking his arrogance. What? He asked, voice lowering. I stood, slow and deliberate, reached into my bag, and pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased at the edges but pristine in purpose. I walked to the head of the table and placed it directly in front of Callista, then stepped back. That's the catering invoice, I said, my voice calm, unwavering. $1,928.45, paid in full by me, like always. They stared at it as though it were written in an alien language. I let my gaze sweep across the table, taking in the flowers, the wine, the crystal place settings. You're welcome, I added evenly. Gideon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I took a slow breath, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Not shame, not embarrassment, not anymore. You've been toasting to her success with my money for years, I said, my voice even, slicing through their comfortable illusions. So here's a toast of my own. I lifted the glass deliberately, letting it catch the light, and held it steady. For the first time, the power of the moment was mine. I tipped my glass slightly toward Callista, just enough to acknowledge her, then set it down untouched. I'll let you toast to that, I said softly, almost a whisper of finality. With that, I picked up my purse and walked out of the dining room, leaving the front door open just long enough to catch the faint, startled gasp behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. I stepped into the cool night, the breeze carrying a subtle trace of rosemary, and the invisible weight of regret. I walked to my car without a word, without tears, without the need to justify myself. They could toast to Callista's brilliance all they wanted, but from that night on, it would be without me. If I didn't belong in their picture, why keep standing in the frame? The thought rested on my shoulders like someone else's jacket, heavy, ill-fitting, and entirely unwelcome. By the time I returned to my apartment, the faint metallic taste of wine lingered in my mouth, though I had barely touched my glass. My purse felt heavier than usual, not just from the receipt tucked inside, but from the burden of finally speaking after years of silence. The next morning, I woke before my alarm, not because I had slept well, but because muscle memory dictated it. I sat on the edge of my bed, the scrubs from yesterday hanging in the closet, still speckled with dried iodine and faint stains of Cabernet. The light outside my window bled in slowly, soft and gray, casting everything in a muted haze. I didn't reach for coffee, I reached for my phone. 3 texts, all from Mom. You embarrassed us last night. That was completely uncalled for. You should apologize to your sister. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned it face down and walked to the bathroom. Brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Tired eyes, lips pressed tight, a faint crease between my brows, a line that had slowly settled over time, like my face had finally caught up with my spirit. I didn't look angry, just finished. The rest of the weekend passed quietly. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, filled out discharge paperwork, held the hand of a woman whose son had never made it to say goodbye. That, strangely, made more sense to me than anything at that dinner table ever had. By midweek, I got a text from Callista, asking if she could borrow one of my old anatomy textbooks. She'd left hers at Oren's, though knowing her, it probably hadn't been opened once. Sure, I replied, already dreading what that meant. Stepping foot in that house again. Thursday afternoon, I arrived. The driveway was empty, which I appreciated. For a moment, the memory of the dining room, of the gold foil place cards, of their dismissive faces, tried to claw at me, but I let it pass. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and rosemary chicken greeting me, not as a weapon anymore, but simply theirs. I was no longer carrying the weight of their celebration. That night, I realized, I had stopped being invisible. I had finally stepped out of their frame. I rang the doorbell out of habit, even though I still had a key. No one answered, so I let myself in. The house felt colder than usual, not in temperature, just in energy. The familiar scent of lemon polish lingered in the hallway, but Vera had lit one of her overpriced lavender candles in the kitchen, like she had been expecting someone more pleasant than me. I moved through the living room slowly, almost cautiously, as if the walls themselves might be listening. That's when I saw it. The gallery wall, once a timeline of family milestones, had been rearranged. I paused, staring, not shocked, but unsurprised. My white coat nursing school graduation photo was gone. In its place was a blown-up canvas of Callista and Oren on a sun-soaked Hawaiian beach. Callista barefoot, radiant, grinning like the weight of anyone else's life had never touched her. The wall didn't just look different. It looked corrected, curated, like someone had decided who belonged and who didn't. I lingered longer than necessary, not out of disbelief, but because I wasn't surprised. On a side table in the hallway, a thick manila envelope caught my eye. Gideon's handwriting scrawled across it, "Will update for family review." I shouldn't have opened it. I did. The language was clinical, matter-of-fact. The house, the Tahoe cabin, the cars, even the antique piano my grandmother once played, everything was going to Callista. My name didn't appear once, not even a line stating I'd declined an inheritance. Just nothing, like I had been erased before I had ever existed. I put the documents back, pressing them flat, corners aligned, meticulous. Then I walked to the kitchen. Vera was at the stove, stirring, her posture calm, detached. She didn't flinch, didn't greet me, as if we were two strangers who happened to share a last name. "I saw the new will," I said evenly. She kept stirring. "Did I die recently and no one told me?" Her tight smile stretched like plastic wrap. "Callista is the face of this family," she said softly. "You're stable, you'll be fine." And there it was, the realization that hit like cold water. She actually believed that was comforting, that being considered fine was some sort of prize, that my stability absolved them of acknowledgement, of space, of legacy. He didn't argue. There was nothing to say. I walked down the hall to the office, where my textbook sat on the second shelf, grabbed it, and turned to leave. Passing the living room, my eyes caught the wall one last time. Not a trace of me remained. No baby pictures, no school portraits, no white coat, only Callista, and I finally understood. I was never meant to be part of their picture. I was the one holding the camera, fetching the frame, paying for the glass. I was invisible by design. At the front door, my fingers paused on the knob. Not rage, but grief. The slow, heavy kind that settles quietly, creeping into your bones. I opened the door, stepped outside, and let it click shut behind me. I didn't look back. I had been funding the celebration of someone who had erased me. The realization didn't strike like lightning. It seeped in, a steady drip, soaking everything inside me until it felt unbearably heavy. That Thursday morning, the first ripple of the truth hit digitally. A text from my bank. Suspicious transaction. $3,200 at Bridal Elegance Boutique. Please confirm. I rubbed my temples before even clicking the link. Bridal Elegance. I knew the store. I knew the gold-lettered bags Callista flaunted in her social media hauls. She always claimed the dresses were gifts from sponsors. Apparently, this one was a gift from me, the emergency credit card I had opened 5 years ago, when the roof at Mom and Dad's had started leaking, was still active. I had given Vera access, just in case. Apparently, just in case, now included shopping for custom wedding gowns under my name. I opened Instagram, and there she was, Callista, twirling in a silk mermaid-cut dress, champagne in hand, her 3 friends cheering. The caption, a single heart emoji. She said yes. I stared at her smiling face and thought, that's $3,200, smiling in designer shoes. I didn't call her. I didn't text Mom. I opened my laptop. 3 hours and a half cup of microwaved coffee later, I had spreadsheets. My mind was already mapping the numbers, tracing the debts, the transactions, the proof of years spent paying for a life that wasn't mine. And for the first time, the anger started to feel deliberate, focused. My online banking history was a paper trail of betrayal. Monthly payments labeled mortgage support, $2,300 a month. Every month for the past 22 months, automatically sent, without thought, without question. I had set them up years ago when Gideon had worried the house might go under back when COVID first hit. But then I remembered the refinance. The mortgage had been paid off 3 years ago. I opened the PDF of the property documents I'd scanned from the will envelope. Paid in full, no active lien. So where the hell had that money been going? I dug deeper, cross-referencing deposits into Callista's accounts. One transfer stood out, $11,480 to the Pacific Online School of Business Management. The executive MBA she'd been bragging about at dinner. She claimed she'd earned a scholarship. No, she'd earned a sister with direct deposit. I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I drank too fast, choking slightly, my hands shaking, not from anger, but from the slow-burning disbelief that comes when you realize you've been the only one holding up a house, while everyone else floats on illusions. The apartment felt different, too still, too clean. I pulled a dusty photo frame from under the counter. My ICU team, shoulder to shoulder, masks off for a single breath between chaos, exhausted and proud. I placed it on my bookshelf, where it belonged. That afternoon, I went for a short walk to get air. Absent-mindedly scrolling my phone at a corner cafe, I saw it. Callista had posted a throwback from a family brunch a few months ago. The one where I'd sat between Vera and the window in pastel shades for Mom's spring rebirth theme. But I wasn't in it. I remembered exactly where I had sat. A sliver of my arm peeked out at the edge, blurred and cropped by a filter. Caption: surround yourself with the people who lift you higher. I froze in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by strangers, feeling shoved off a cliff. She hadn't just forgotten me, she'd edited me out, like clutter, like an inconvenience to her aesthetic. I didn't cry. Tears implied hope, and hope was gone. At home, I sat on the floor, surrounded by receipts and statements, clarity burning in me like wildfire. This wasn't a mistake. This was orchestration. Mom didn't forget to tell me where the money went. Callista didn't accidentally crop me out. Gideon didn't misspeak. Every dollar, every word, every inch of that wall, intentional. The cost of my silence, $47,000 and counting. More than money though. My silence had cost me a family I had spent my life protecting. I wasn't invisible. I was disposable. That night, on the couch, no music, no TV, just me and the refrigerator's hum, I decided no more silent contributions. If they wanted to celebrate on someone else's dime, they'd have to find someone else to fund it. 3 weeks later, scheduled for a double shift, I wrapped up my last patient handoff and changed into something simple: long black skirt, tan cardigan over a white blouse. Clean, plain, blending in, the exact opposite of invisible. At Callista's engagement party, downtown on a rooftop lit with Edison bulbs, the air crisp with early fall, I stepped in holding a gift I'd planned months ago. First interaction, a stranger asking for napkins. Callista saw it, smiled that slow, cruel curl of lips, and let it pass. She didn't correct her guest, didn't wave. I placed the gift on the table, found a seat on the edge, hands clenched around a glass of water. The speeches began. Gideon praised Callista's vision, her leadership, her unstoppable future. Vera followed with buttery words of pride. I sat frozen, watching the slideshow behind them. A mess of filtered selfies, no childhood photos, nothing I had compiled lovingly after nights of work. When I asked Vera, she smiled without looking. Yours was too clinical, hers had better lighting. Callista took the mic, and for the first time, I was publicly rewritten. Our brilliant Callista, Vera said. And her father, Gideon. And this is Bella. She's a preschool teacher. After nearly a decade in critical care, resuscitating lives, holding hearts in my hands, walking the dying back from the edge, reduced to a title that didn't exist. Heat rose in my ears. I didn't storm out. I listened, waited. When the speeches ended, I approached Vera and Callista, my voice low, firm. If you ever do that again, I won't just correct you in private. Vera smirked. Don't be so sensitive. It's a party, Callista added, sipping her cocktail. It was just a mix-up. Everyone knows you're something medical. I took a deep breath, and if you're wondering why the catering check bounced, maybe check your Venmo history. They blinked, they faltered. No yelling, no drama, just quiet authority. Done. Back home, rain ticking on the window, I tackled my taxes, rifled through old receipts, and at the bottom of a shoebox, found a spiral notebook that once belonged to my grandmother. Inside, a yellowing envelope with my name. Her handwriting: "This savings account is yours. Bella, do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Use it when you need it. I know how strong you are, but you shouldn't always have to be." Bank account number circled. $16,000. Except empty. I logged into the bank website, entered the details, and there it was, closed. Been funding one, just not the one you think. I paused, letting the words settle like dust in the chandelier-lit air. Callista's smirk faltered. Vera's hands clenched at the edge of the table. Gideon's jaw tightened, the kind of tension that comes when someone finally stops playing the fool and calls the bluff you thought was invisible. I reached for my wine glass, not to drink, but to steady myself. Every dollar, every credit, every smile that you've traded for my work, my labor, my money, documented. Every forgery, every edited photo, every exclusion, documented. And now, it's all here. I gestured at the neatly arranged folder in front of Callista. She swallowed. "Bella, I don't," I interrupted. My voice calm but steel-edged. "You won't rewrite this moment. You won't erase me from my own life or my own achievements ever again. The awards, the scholarships, the recognition, they don't exist without my work. And now, the record exists. Legal, financial, undeniable." The room was silent except for the subtle hum of the chandelier and the clink of silverware they'd set aside. They had no script for this. This wasn't a toast. A toast didn't come with notarized letters, bank statements, and credit logs. This was reality. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely untouchable. I placed the last document on the table, my hand steady. "You've spent years making me invisible, erasing me, taking from me. But I've stopped being your silent contributor. I am not part of your curated family tableau. I am my own person, my own legacy, my own name. And starting now, every action you take in my name will require my consent. That's the record. That's the truth." Gideon exhaled slowly, a sound heavy with the awareness that the game had changed. Callista's face flushed, not with anger, but with the shock of someone finally refusing to play along. Vera pressed her lips together, her tight smile gone. They all understood the shift before them. I picked up my purse, the folder tucked safely inside. I didn't raise my voice, didn't slam the chair. I simply stood, adjusted my blazer, and walked to the door. "Dinner's over," I said quietly. And just like that, I left, the click of the front door behind me echoing like the final punctuation on a sentence they could no longer edit. Outside, the night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and wet earth from the evening rain. I inhaled it deeply, savoring the clarity of having my own name, my own worth, and my own story back. Behind me, they could murmur, gasp, or debate. I didn't need to look. I wasn't just leaving the room. I was leaving the weight of years of theft, lies, and silencing behind. And for the first time, the world felt like it was finally mine. Lingering ache of their house, not the curated cruelty of Callista's smile, not the quiet suffocation of Vera's approval. It waited like a patient guest, unassuming, clean. I sat cross-legged on the bare floor, my laptop beside me, a cup of tea steaming in my hand, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without apology. There was no fanfare, no triumphant social media post, no need. The freedom was quiet, like the moment just before dawn, when the world is soft and still, untouched by expectation. I unpacked one small box at a time, savoring the deliberate pace, placing each item where it belonged. The kettle whistled softly, a mundane comfort I had long overlooked. I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages from friends, coworkers, patients' families, people who had seen me, really seen me. And in those tiny threads of connection, I realized that recognition didn't need to come from blood. It came from respect, gratitude, and understanding. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. Outside, the city hung faintly through the window. Rain had left the streets gleaming, and streetlights reflected in puddles, like scattered stars. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth travel down my chest, down to my hands. No one had to cheer, no one had to toast. I was standing, finally, in my own life, unedited, unborrowed, unspent, and that was enough, more than enough. The thread that had strangled me for years wasn't just cut, it was gone. The air smelled faintly of rain, and something else, something entirely mine. Possibility. The apartment waited, the future waited, and for the first time, so did I. Online banking history was a paper trail of betrayal. There were monthly payments labeled mortgage support that I'd been sending automatically, $2,300 a month, every month for the last 22 months. I'd set them up when Gideon mentioned the house might go under, back when COVID first hit, except I remembered the refinance. The mortgage had been paid off 3 years ago. I opened the scanned PDF of the property documents from that will envelope and confirmed it. No active lien, paid in full. So where the hell was that money going? I dug deeper, cross-referencing deposits into Callista's accounts. One transfer stood out, a tuition payment of $11,480 to the Pacific Online School of Business Management. That was the executive MBA Callista had been bragging about at dinner. She said she'd gotten a scholarship. No, she'd gotten a sister with direct deposit. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. I poured water into a glass and drank it too fast, choking slightly. My hands shook, not from anger, but from the slow burning disbelief that comes from realizing you've been the only one holding up a house while everyone else floats. The air in my apartment felt different, too still, too clean. I pulled out a photo frame from under the counter, dusty, one I hadn't looked at in a while. My ICU team, standing shoulder to shoulder in protective gear, masks off for a single breath between chaos. Exhausted, proud. I picked it up and set it on my bookshelf where it belonged. That afternoon, I decided to take a short walk to get some air. I scrolled through my phone absent-mindedly and saw it. Callista had posted a throwback photo from a family brunch. I wasn't in it, cropped, edited out. The caption read, Surround yourself with the people who lift you higher. I didn't cry. Tears required the belief that something could be fixed. At home, I sat on the floor, surrounded by receipts, banking statements, and a burning clarity I hadn't felt in years. They didn't make a mistake. This wasn't negligence. This was orchestration. Every dollar, every word, every inch of space on that wall, where my photo used to hang, it was all intentional. And the price of my silence, $47,000 and counting. More than money, my silence had cost me my place in a family I'd spent my whole life protecting. I wasn't just invisible, I was disposable. That night, I sat on the couch in silence. No music, no TV, just me and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. And that's when I decided, no more silent contribution. If they wanted to celebrate on someone else's dime, they'd have to find someone else to fund their fantasy. They didn't take me seriously then. That was their first mistake. You don't have to scream to be dangerous. You just have to stop funding the lies. 3 weeks later, I worked a double shift, exhausting but grounding. By 3:20 p.m., I was done. I changed quickly into a long black skirt, tan cardigan, white blouse, simple, clean, nothing flashy. Exactly what I didn't want anymore. I arrived at Callista's engagement party. Rooftop, Edison bulbs, soft jazz. She posted non-stop about it online. I walked in holding the gift I'd planned, months ago, back when she was still my sister, not a parasite in stilettos. The first interaction was small but telling. A woman in red asked me for napkins, then noticed I was there. Callista caught my eye and smiled cruelly. I placed the gift down and found a quiet seat at the edge of the crowd. Speeches began. Gideon praised Callista's leadership. Vera called her a natural light. Applause. I wasn't in any photos on the slideshow. My video, crafted from real childhood moments, had been replaced with filtered selfies. I leaned toward Vera. What happened to the video I sent? She smiled without looking at me. Yours was a bit too clinical, darling. Hers had better lighting. I didn't react immediately, but later I told Oren everything. He was shocked, but quiet. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to protect myself. I filed. I stopped letting them write the narrative. Weeks passed. Legal documents, statements, proof of theft, forgeries, stolen savings, and stolen credit lined up like a mosaic. I filed with Sullivan. Heartline LLC, Callista's company, was built entirely from my capstone project. We had grounds. The dinner came, the one Vera framed as a peace offering. I arrived with calm, documents ready. Callista boasted about the Western Marketing Innovator Award, citing the Heartline pitch deck, the one I had created. I let the moment breathe. Then I laid out the folder: bank statements, payment transfers, credit card charges, the forged loan application, the original capstone file with timestamp, metadata, a notarized letter from my professor. Silence. Dense, complete silence. Since I'm not built for the spotlight, I said to Callista, maybe you should pay your own bills. I left the dining room, with heels clicking softly, each step lighter than the last. By Tuesday, missed calls flooded in. Bank, Gideon, Vera, Callista. I let the phone lie face down. In the end, nothing was dramatic. No gloating, just inevitable collapse. By Friday, Sullivan confirmed, my financial ties to them were dissolved. The contributions, $47,500, were recognized, though unrecoverable. I was free, clean. I moved to Davis quietly. No send-off, no ceremony. The apartment welcomed me. Sunlight, muted gray afternoons, bare walls. I unpacked slowly. Grandma's photo, the letter, my diploma, visible, celebrated quietly. Oren moved out, leaving the dog. A neighbor's anonymous validation arrived. Vera's letter of excuses went into a folder marked unnecessary. I no longer needed their closure. At work, a patient's family thanked me sincerely. Real acknowledgement, not owed or staged. That night, tea in hand, I wrote in my journal, I used to want them to say those words. Now I just need to believe them myself. The healing wasn't perfect. The absence of family still throbbed, sometimes. But I no longer needed to be rewritten into someone else's story. I was writing my own, whole, real, unborrowed. The hardest thing isn't standing up to strangers. It's walking away from the people who were supposed to protect you. Silence finally was mine.